Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. My name is Jim, and this episode is sponsored by NFL Draft Fanatics. This episode is going to talk about the players on the draft board in the Minnesota-Illinois Big Ten game that's happening this weekend. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. I have pulled up the player board from NFL Draft Fanatics, and these are the players that it has for Minnesota. And really the primary player to talk about is at the top, and that's tackle Aerionte Ersery from Minnesota. There's a couple reasons to talk about it. One is that this tackle class isn't going to be as good as it was last year. Some of the players at the top, like Banks and Campbell, people are saying maybe they're guards. They may not be tackles, whereas Ersery would be one of the more higher-ranked tackles, which is he projects the NFL level as a tackle. So that's something to keep your eye on. So if you're watching the Minnesota-Illinois game, definitely pay attention to Ersery. He's a big guy. You can't really miss him. I've seen several Minnesota games this year. He always seems to be visible on the TV screen, if that makes sense. Want to point out Ja Joyner, edge for Minnesota, and Cody Lindenberg, linebacker for Minnesota. Don't know how high those guys will be drafted, but those are some names to mention, become familiar with. I want to flip to Illinois. A few players to mention there. And the player I really want to mention primarily is going to be Pat Bryant, the wide receiver, and Gabe Jacas, the edge. So the cool thing is we get to see Jacas line up against Ersery, right? So we have a draftable edge against a draftable offensive tackle. I think that matchup, Ersery, first round grade, or I should say first round caliber talent there. Jacas would be a little bit further down the draft board. I have him outside my top 100, but we're still going to be drafting Gabe Jacas at some point in the draft, right? So you get a chance to see two NFL caliber players playing in a college football setting. Definitely something to pay attention to. Pat Bryant, wide receiver from Illinois. We just did a scouting report episode on wide receivers and corners last Friday, and Pat Bryant was one of the players that was mentioned. So if you want to see a detailed scouting report on him, feel free to go back on YouTube or Twitter and check out that podcast for a more detailed scouting report. But what I will point out is that Illinois has two really good receivers here in Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant. Going up against Minnesota, I would definitely pay attention to Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin as wide receivers. And then I would also pay attention to tackle J.C. Davis from Illinois. I think he's moved up a little bit on the board. I would have to say, out of any player on this list that could move up the board, it would be Gabe Jacas or Pat Bryant. Being able, with the last few games they have this year for Illinois, I think Pat Bryant on day 2, we can have that conversation. I don't think it's likely to happen, but I think it's possible. And same thing, I think Jacas could play himself into the back end of round 3 if he plays out the rest of the year and has some good games, good production against NFL caliber talent. So this podcast is sponsored by NFL Draft Fanatics. And NFL Draft Fanatics is the only interactive mock draft simulator. And what that means is that the fans control the big board. The fans control who the simulator picks for their team by doing mock drafts. In addition, NFL Draft Fanatics has new functionality so fans can rank players. So if mock drafting isn't your thing and you just want to build a player rankings board, it is providing users the ability to do that. So feel free to check their simulator out, and this channel will have other demonstrations of their simulator. Mrs. R Relevant is a daily draft podcast. That is what you're listening to and watching now. Every single day, this channel has draft content. Some of the draft content are the scouting reports, like we talked about with Pat Bryant. Some of the episodes are just previews of college football games, pointing out who some of the draftable players are in that game. But every single day from now until the draft, NFL Draft Fanatics YouTube channel will have a new piece of draft information every day of the week. So feel free to like, follow, and subscribe. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like and follow on Twitter at NFL Draft Fanatic. There is no I in fanatic. And with that, I'd like to close out this podcast with just a reminder that any day can be your draft day if you have the right attitude. On behalf of NFL Draft Fanatics, my name is Jim. Thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.